Welcome to the deep dive. If you're looking to get up to speed on a complex topic quickly and thoroughly, you're in the right place.
Absolutely.
Today, we're jumping into the Campus for Hope. It's a proposed homeless services campus right here in the Valley.
That's right. We've got some meeting transcripts, project documents, quite a bit to go through.
Yeah, and our mission really is to pull out the key stuff. What's the plan? What are people arguing about? How's the community reacting? We want to give you the overview without, getting bogged down.
Sounds good. And looking at the materials, the first thing that jumps out is just the scale of this Campus for Hope idea.
Yeah.
It's ambitious.
It really seems like it. Okay, so let's unpack that. What exactly is it supposed to be?
Well, fundamentally, it's about creating a central hub,
Mm-hmm.
a single place for all sorts of services for people experiencing homelessness.
So not just a shelter bed. We're talking counseling, healthcare.
Yeah, counseling, medical, dental, even vision care.
Yeah.
And more childcare, job training stuff, help finding housing, legal advice. They even mention a pet kennel.
Wow. Okay. So really trying to cover all the bases in one location, an integrated approach, kind of.
Exactly. That's the core idea, co-location. Making it easier for people to get the help they need without having to navigate a dozen different agencies across town.
Right. Streamlines the whole thing.
And the stated goal, it's about getting people into permanent, stable housing and, importantly, keeping them there, preventing that return to homelessness.
Makes sense. Now, I saw they mentioned the San Antonio model as inspiration.
They did, yes. Haven for Hope down there. But they're also drawing a key distinction. They plan to separate the initial, low-barrier emergency shelter part from the longer-term residential and service areas on the campus.
That separation feels important. Who is this actually for? Who are they trying to serve?
They've highlighted a few groups, people who are homeless for the first time, and apparently that's a high percentage here in Clark County.
Is that right?
Yeah. Also, young adults, 18 to 24. Older folks experiencing homelessness, couples who often face challenges finding shelters together, and survivors of domestic violence needing safe options.
Okay. Quite a range. And what about the size? How many people are we talking about?
The target is 900 beds,
Mm.
and they estimate they could serve around 4,300 people annually through the various programs and stays.
900 beds, 4,300 people a year. That's significant.
It is. It's a large-scale operation they're envisioning.
Which brings us to security. That must be a huge consideration, right? What's the plan there?
Definitely. They're talking about a 247 security force run by the campus itself.
Okay.
And there's also talk of possibly using off-duty police officers for patrols, maybe in the surrounding neighborhood. Plus the physical stuff, fencing, lighting, access control points.
Especially if there are kids potentially on site for services.
Exactly. Security seems to be a high priority in the planning documents, yeah.
So a pretty robust security setup plan. What's the timeline look like? When might this actually happen?
Well, the schedule they've laid out is pretty quick. Reconstruction work on the site starting this summer.
This summer already.
Yep. Then relocating some existing services that are already there in September. The main, vertical construction starts in 2026.
Okay.
And they're aiming to open the doors in spring or summer of 2027.
Wow, 2027. That feels fast for something this big.
It does seem ambitious, yes.
All right, let's switch gears to the money. How is this being paid for? There was a big number thrown around.
Yes, the funding. And this is where it gets kind of interesting. There was an initial $100 million pledge from the Nevada Resort Association.
Okay, the NRA.
Right, and the state matched that. So $200 million total earmarked for this.
That's a lot of money.
It is. But here's the thing that caught people's attention. The actual nonprofit, the Campus for Hope organization. It was officially set up after that money was allocated back in June 2023.
Wait, the money was approved before the organization existed? That does sound backwards.
She struck some people that way, yeah. And it ties into some community concerns.
How so?
Well, the directors listed for this new nonprofit, they have connections to the gaming industry.
Ah.
And the legislation apparently gives these directors some say in how the funds are used, which, led to questions about potential conflicts of interest or, who gets prioritized if there are decisions about repayment or things like that.
So the industry potentially benefiting from addressing visible homelessness near the Strip has a hand in directing these public and pledged funds.
That's the core of the concern being raised, yes.
Yeah.
It's a layer that adds complexity.
Definitely something to watch. What about the day-to-day running costs? Who pays for that once it's built?
That's another really big question mark right now. From what we've seen, the city of Las Vegas seems to be the only government entity currently sort of formally on the hook for the ongoing operating expenses.
Only the city. But it's meant to serve people from Henderson, North Las Vegas, the county too, right?
That's the intention, yes. But so far, there don't seem to be any public formal agreements about those other jurisdictions chipping in for the long-term operational costs.
Hmm. So a potential sustainability issue down the line, or at least a question of fairness and who foots the bill.
It's definitely a point of ongoing discussion and concern.
Okay, let's pivot to the community meetings then. It sounds like residents had a lot to say. A major theme seems to be how fast this all happened and maybe not enough transparency.
Absolutely. That came up again and again.
Mm.
The bill enabling this project introduced and signed into law in about 2 weeks. June 2023.
2 weeks for something this significant.
Yeah, and a lot of residents expressed feeling completely blindsided, like this massive decision was rushed through without any real chance for them to weigh in or even understand it fully.
I could see why that would be frustrating. Did that feeling carry over to things like impact studies?
It did. People were asking, where are the studies? Environmental impact, traffic impact, economic impact. They wanted to see the data, especially given how fast the law passed.
Did the project reps have answers?
They mentioned some studies were done maybe a couple of years prior, but residents were pushing for access to those specific documents, to see if they're adequate, if they reflect the current plan. There's a desire to really scrutinize the details.
Understandable. Now, the location itself, Charleston and Jones, that seems to be a real flashpoint. Why there?
The biggest issue is what's already nearby. It's close to established neighborhoods, businesses, churches. And the number that kept coming up was 14 schools.
14. Including, like, elementary schools.
Yes, and early childhood centers, preschools, daycares,
Yeah.
a whole mix. And a specific point was raised about school bus routes. Kids living within 2 miles often walk, right?
Right. No bus service, usually.
So parents were really worried about safety for kids walking to and from those nearby schools with this large campus right there.
14 schools.
Yeah.
Yeah, that definitely paints a picture of why families would be concerned. And the worries go beyond just the location itself, right, to the neighborhood impact overall.
Oh, yeah. Fears about increased crime, people loitering, just changing the whole feel of what they describe as a quiet neighborhood, even with the planned security.
And questions about that security, too, like how effective can campus security be compared to Metro?
Exactly. What's their actual authority? What's the plan to handle issues off campus but nearby? And the magnet effect concern came up, too, the idea that building this big facility might just draw more homeless individuals to that specific area.
That's always a tough balancing act with these kinds of services. Another big area of questions seem to be around who gets in and what happens next, the eligibility and the graduation process.
Yes, lots of unanswered questions there, like do you have to be a Nevada resident? How much do you have to commit to the programs? Are there sobriety rules, especially with kids potentially around for services? What about background checks? Certain felonies excluded?
So the nuts and bolts of who qualifies.
Right. And then what does graduation actually mean? How do people successfully transition out into permanent housing? What's the support look like then? And what if someone doesn't become self-sufficient in that average stay they mentioned, like 4 or 5 months?
Yeah, what is the plan then? It sounds like people want reassurance. It's not just a revolving door or a dead end.
Precisely. They want to see a clear path to stability.
And they were also asking about who else should be paying, weren't they? Beyond just the city of Vegas.
Yes. Back to the funding, but the operational side. Why aren't North Las Vegas, Henderson, the county jurisdictions whose residents will likely use the campus, formally committing funds yet?
Even though the project folks say it complements existing services.
Right. The representative stressed it's meant to improve the system, work with other providers, not replace them. But the lack of financial commitment from other local governments was definitely a sticking point for residents.
And the classic concerns, too, I imagine. Property values? Impact on local businesses?
Absolutely. Homeowners worried about their investment, business owners concerned about impacts, some saying they weren't even properly notified or consulted about the project's potential effects on them.
Then there is that other facility planned for the same land that seemed to catch people off guard.
Yeah, the forensics facility.
Yeah.
That definitely threw another log on the fire. This is planned as a maximum security place for people with mental disorders involved in the criminal justice system.
Maximum security. On the same plot of land.
That's the plan described. 300 beds, a nearly $300 million budget. Someone pointed out the sheer size, almost twice the floor space of a Venetian casino.
Wow. Okay, I can see how adding that into the mix next to neighborhoods and 14 schools would significantly escalate safety concerns. It felt like news to many in the meetings.
It seemed that way, yes. Like maybe it hadn't been communicated as clearly or as early as the main Campus for Hope part. It added a whole new layer of anxiety.
Understandably. And finally, some people were questioning the whole approach, right? Why this project instead of other things?
Yeah, that came up too. Why put all this money, hundreds of millions, into one centralized campus instead of, say, building more affordable housing units across the valley?
A fundamental question about strategy.
Exactly. And someone also brought up transparency for the nonprofit itself, suggesting they enroll in some kind of public accountability organization.
How did the campus representative respond to that?
They stated a commitment to transparency, said they'd look into that specific organization, but also pointed out there are already legislative requirements for them to report data and outcomes.
Okay. So, through all this, you can really feel the emotions running high in these discussions.
Oh, definitely. You hear really strong opposition. People feeling ignored, feeling like this was forced on them without their input, just plain angry sometimes.
But the project proponents have a different view.
Yes, they talk about the potential for a transformational positive impact. They point to San Antonio's model. They mention high success rates from other local reentry programs as evidence that these approaches can work. They see it as a vital step forward.
So you have that optimism on one side.
And on the other side, among many residents who spoke out, a lot of frustration, anger, and genuine fear. Worries about safety, their kids, their homes, their community's character.
So it sounds intense.
It does. And one resident even brought up potentially taking legal action to try and halt the project until all these questions get answered satisfactorily. That shows you the level of concern.
So wrapping up this deep dive, it's clear this Campus for Hope is, well, it's complicated. You've got this big vision to tackle homelessness, clashing with very real, very local community concerns.
Exactly. It really highlights that classic tension, doesn't it? Trying to solve a big societal problem with a large-scale solution, but needing to place that solution somewhere, and the people who live there have legitimate questions and anxieties about safety, transparency, and how it will change their lives.
The scale of the campus, the services, the sheer number of concerns raised from funding to security to that forensic facility, it really underscores the challenges here.
And it's important to stress, like you said, there's still a lot we don't know for sure. Information isn't always clear or easy to find, and the conversation between the community and the project leaders is clearly ongoing and pretty charged at times.
Right. Which leaves us, and you listening, with a big question to chew on, I think.
Yeah. When you look at a situation like this, with all its complexities and competing needs, what does it really take to create solutions for tough issues like homelessness that actually work and have community support?
How do you find that balance? Addressing the urgent need, but also genuinely respecting and addressing the concerns of the people whose neighborhood is right there on the front lines.
It's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Or in this case, the multi-hundred-million-dollar question. Something to think about.
Definitely. If you want to dig deeper, you could look for the original documents or check out how other cities have tackled similar projects. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.